Hello, welcome to another weekly video. Today I'm going to be talking about abusive parents. And some of this I think I'm going to pull from my own personal experience. I know there's probably going to be some question about like what God views with abusive parents, so I'll try to touch on that a little bit. But um, I'll try to start with my own experience. Of course, I've talked about this in some other videos as well, but um, I'll try to talk about um, maybe a little bit more detail on the things that I've said. Um, so I mentioned before that my mother was a narcissist and my father was a drug addict, and spent many years trying to deal with those relationships specifically. I also had a sister who was a drug addict and a narcissist, so it was very difficult to deal with her too. But um, I'll try to focus on my parents' relationships. Um, for a long time, I was able to keep contact with my mother, although I didn't want to. When I moved out of my parents' house, and when I say parents, I mean my mother and my stepfather. I kind of refer to them as my parents just because um, they raised me majority of my life. Um, my father moved away. We lived in North Carolina. Me and my parents lived in North Carolina, and my father moved to Georgia where his family was, and now he lives in Alabama. So he's always lived like several states away from us. So uh, we never really had a very close relationship. I say me and my sister. When I say we, never really had a close relationship with him. Um, and I mean, even though that's true, we still talk to him quite a bit. He he was definitely less verbally abusive and physically abusive than my mother, um, so I think there was a closeness as far as a bond with him, but as far as distance, we didn't have a close relationship. Um, he um, he was very easy to be around, but and I guess I'm talking about like as far as how he treated you, he was very kind and loving, but he was also a very big enabler, which I didn't really realize was a problem until probably the last year or two in my life. Um, and and really the drugs, I think, when he was on drugs, he was very neglectful. So so when I say abusive, I consider my dad to have been abusive in the way that he was neglectful and he abandoned me and my sister. Now, again, I don't know how much that has to do with my mother kind of treated him so bad that like she pushed him to a point where he really couldn't talk to us very much. I mean, like I said, after my dad and my mother divorced, he ended up having to go back down to Georgia with his family. So he was kind of forced into a situation he didn't want to be in. And I mean, being two states away, it wasn't really easy to make the trip to see us very often. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses for him because, of course, I've heard all types of families trying to make it work, even living states away, going to see their children every other weekend. I've heard of scenarios like this. So, um, I mean, he probably could have done more, but I look at it like I don't know how much my mother was in the way. She was, like I said, abusive to him. She definitely drove him away. And I don't blame her for not wanting to deal with her if that was part of it, although he's never said that. But um, anyway, I just try to look at it like what happened over the years was a lot of neglect and abandonment. And then I do think there was some manipulation that happened, but that was when I got older. Um, he he also told a lot of lies, which I think um, is common with someone on drugs. He lied to me and my sister quite a bit. There were also times where we would go visit him, and um, he would just leave me and my sister at like a. I think I remember one time when we were going to a car shop, and I don't remember all the details. I guess we were a car was his car was being fixed or something like that, and I remember us going to pick up the car and waiting for it to be done, and he left and said he would be back shortly, and he just never came back. And we had to call I guess one of the he was staying with a woman that I think he eventually married. So we had to call her. I think maybe we called my mother to try to um, help us, somebody to come pick us up. There were things like that, of course. I guess that kind of thing was hurtful, but as I got older, I think I had more of an understanding of what was going on. I remember when I was before my mother and father divorced. I remember feeling like I didn't understand why my dad couldn't get off drugs, um, and be with the family. But um, I guess I'm just trying to give as much details about what I consider the abuse from my father. As I got older and he got off drugs, I think there was a lot of enabling, but I didn't really see the same level of abuse. Um, and of course, I think I mentioned a little bit about how the last year or so I stopped talking to my mother, but she was able to start manipulating him to try to get information from me. So that's why we're not talking now. As far as my mother, like I've tried to talk to her, but she's been abusive so many times. Um, when I try to reach out to her, that I just couldn't be in contact with her. So um, you may be wondering if you should continue to have a relationship with your parents if they're abusive. And I guess I would say it depends on what's going on. I think that we all go through um, a certain amount of abuse living at home with our parents. And I can't really say for sure what every situation looks like. Some are worse than others. I mean, um, I'm in some groups with people who have parents who are abusive, and a lot of it is pretty extreme. Especially if your parents are on drugs, that tends to be a dynamic where you have to not speak to them until they get better. But I guess I'll try to speak to it from what I feel like how God feels about it. And that's always tough because it really depends on the situation. Kind of like I was saying before. I mean, um, even if you're not really looking at it from a God standpoint, like you have to really look at what's going on in your life with that parent to determine if you should have a relationship with them or not. I mean, one of the biggest factors I consider when I was deciding about the relationship with my parents was my mental health, my stress level, you know, just just my mother having my phone number, like I can't even tell you how much stress that would give me. It was horrible. And don't get me wrong, like um it was worse at certain points, but like she really seemed she really seemed like she loved to reach out on holidays, and I don't know what that was, but like I guess she'd start feeling lonely or something, and she'd be thinking about me, and she'd reach out, and so every holiday was just horrible for me, and I just couldn't stand it. And when I finally went no contact, I felt a lot better. I knew that she could only reach me um, through certain ways, and she would most likely not reach out those ways. Like for example, I think she still knows my in-laws' phone number, but she doesn't know my husband's number. She doesn't know my number, so um, she can only talk. She could only reach me through certain people, so it didn't really bother me the same way as when she had direct contact to me. So, I mean, I felt a lot better now, and I'm just using that as an example. Um, but, if I really look at how God viewed it, I really felt like it depended on what was going on. There were times where I felt like God wasn't really okay with me cutting off contact with her, but it felt like um, I needed to go through certain things to see how her behavior was affecting me. When I was living at home, I never really thought about my mental health or how things were affecting me. So as I got older, it felt like it was more important to analyze what she was doing and how it was affecting me. And I did take a lot of time to try to really analyze what was going on. When I would reach out to her, she might change the subject. When I would reach out for her, she wouldn't respond for 3 days. And it was like once I really started taking inventory of all the things that were happening, I started to see how it just wasn't good for me anymore. Um, so, I'm not in contact with either of my parents, and I do feel like that's not going to be a forever thing, but I'm kind of just waiting for something that will indicate to me it's time to try again. So, again, I would never say that, cutting a relationship with off, excuse me, I would never say cutting a relationship off with your parents is a permanent thing. Um, but I wouldn't say anything's permanent with God. I guess I would just say it that way. Um, it just is something you have to take day by day and always keep yourself open to a different possibility of what you should be doing. So anyway, I don't want to take too long, so I'm gonna stop it there and thank you for listening. I hope you have a good day.